To help us break down DeepSeek as well as the pros and cons of AI is Ralph Vincent Regalado, Chief Scientist and Head of AI at Kollab, Inc. It's a beautiful day, Ralph, and thank you for making it here quick, unlike Paolo.
Thank you also.
So Ralph, first and foremost, before we talk about DeepSeek, let's talk about AI, because most people are familiar with AI when it comes to ChatGPT.
Right.
So can we intro what AI is first to our viewers?
Okay, artificial intelligence, these are technologies or algorithms that is able to provide the way that they can actually generate content, or like content could either be videos, it could either be text, and the way it's built is coming from data to be able to probably reason out, probably do some particular tasks related to humans. So it's relatively built on data to do human-related tasks.
Yeah, Ralph, a lot of news has been made because of DeepSeek in particular. It sent stocks tumbling in the United States. NVIDIA in particular is having a very hard time after all of this because it turns out it could be produced cheaper. For those who are hearing about it but don't really completely understand it, bakit nga naging disruptor ang DeepSeek compared to other chatbots like ChatGPT?
Okay, so prior to DeepSeek coming into the industry, the way that the AI models are built is they need to like invest to much more higher powered infrastructure to which you need to like consume more chips, to which we know that NVIDIA is the one as provider of those chips.
Yeah.
So the trajectory is more like, okay, let's build more powerful systems, more powerful infrastructure, and like build models on top of those infrastructure. So the goal really is like to increase investment in infrastructure, and then you have more data come in. So we have a lot of like data sources, and train more data, which would actually require infrastructure. When DeepSeek was introduced like this week, it's changed the way the trajectory of the industry is, because they can actually like build system that is much more cheaper, meaning like I don't require that much infrastructure. So I'm actually modifying it on a level of application level. So you can see that there's an infrastructure level and application level. So they optimize the way that they build the model on the application level, which requires them to actually minimize resources on the infrastructure level.
So
Ralph,
when you say,
okay.
oh sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Ralph, can you walk us through how DeepSeek uses deep learning, to generate insights?
I think all of the large language models is either with ChatGPT,
Yeah.
Gemini, and like DeepSeek uses the deep learning. So I think in a nutshell, what deep learning is like, if I say the word like happy, we usually think of it, birthday is the next word, right? If I use the word like merry, Christmas would be the next word. So it's more of like a sequence of like words depending on like probability what proceeds next. Since it's trained to like huge amount of like data, it can actually probabilistically know what would be the next word is. So it's how large language model and like deep learning is actually used to come up with like reasons on what to actually answer.
You know, Ralph, I think Mo was going to be able to relate to this because on the ban siya sa TikTok dahil sa US,
I did,
sa
so I had
US
to
for a
make
while.
another one.
So one of the reasons why they banned the US, the US did ban TikTok was because of data privacy, the sensitivity of who's handling the data. Is there the same concern? I don't know, Mo, if you have the same concern as well for DeepSeek because it's still a Chinese-produced
Well, actually, I read
application.
articles this morning. The U.S. Navy just banned DeepSeek, and during the time that DeepSeek came out, there were so many malicious hardware attacks on it. I don't know if it's because it was cheaply made.
Right.
I'm not sure what, but can you expound more on that?
I think in terms of like how large language model in general works is like there are two components into it: what data you feed and how you collect that data, right? I think last night I was like reading news like OpenAI was able to find a way that that they saw that some of the data that was actually used by DeepSeek came from OpenAI, right? I think that's one of the things that they actually exploring. So there are two components into it: how do you collect data, what are your data sources, and at the end of it is like, what are the content you are actually producing? I think some of the people who have tried DeepSeek already, that they have observed that there are words or like phrases that they don't want, it will not actually provide you with an answer. Because probably it's like something that's affecting the visuals or like affecting how China is actually perceived. So it's more of that two aspect that we need to actually look at: what data is actually being fed to the system and how they actually produce content.
This is the AI generation, right? Like
Yeah.
everybody is now using AI, getting into AI. There are pros and cons, right? When you look at AI, there are advantages and disadvantages. Can you tell us, Ralph, what are the most impactful benefits that AI has brought to the society?
That's a great question. I have been like exploring artificial intelligence like 10, 15 years ago. And I think there's a lot of like advantages into it. It's been used to actually in agriculture. So they use machine learning and artificial intelligence to like check out what are the diseases of the plants. They use it for actually for agriculture to be able to identify what's the best time to actually plant a particular species. They use it also in Brazil. They leverage it to actually extend the coverage of like monitoring who are the illegal loggers just by like listening to the sounds. So there's a lot of like work particularly on that. And on the medical space, they have been using it, for example, to explore new ways to probably resolve cancer, to be able to also like observe how we can actually improve further the way that we monitor our existing systems. So also like be used to create new drugs, particularly in drug discovery. There's a lot of like ways on how it's actually been used. And even like in weather, like trying to forecast like weather, they have been using artificial intelligence to like speed up the process, like ingesting data and like doing those forecasting. There's a lot of like use cases, particularly of like, its advantages that we are actually leveraging and using right now.
Yeah, I've seen it used in education as well. Makes
Yes.
education easier. Don't write your essays using ChatGPT, though, guys. They know, okay? They're gonna find out. But then we've seen it used in, if I believe, law schools in particular. So they are able to search for certain pertinent cases when it comes to their own studying, and of course, in creating their defenses. But then when you look at let's take a look at the cons here, because there are so many ethical problems when it comes to using AI, when it comes to generated images of certain people, or even video using manipulating people. Anne has been worried about her voice being manipulated by AI.
Oh, actually, that is a concern in the voicing industry here in the Philippines.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you take a look at all of that. I mean, like, are we at a point yet when the ethics of AI have been clearly defined and maybe enforceable, or are we still learning what the boundaries of that are?
I think in the industry right now, each of the organizations are actually looking into what are the implications of like artificial in their own industry and trying to like govern that. I think majority of the efforts are focused more of like companies setting their own guardrails on what to do and what not actually to do. And I think that also like cascades in terms of like governance as a whole, right? Because we need to like see use cases of like what are the benefits of it and how do we match it up with what are the disadvantage use cases of it. With respect to like ethics, there are a lot of like challenges because again, we're looking at it right now, it's a black box, right? We don't know like what are the inner workings of it. So I think it's very important that we also like be educated in terms of like, okay, how does it actually generate content? Is it even a factual content, right? Because sometimes we're using all of these tools who provide us content and we treat it as like, that's the end of it. Like I'm not going to do extra research to actually check and validate if the content it produces is actually true. So it also like changes the way how we actually use this tool and look at these tools because we're not quite sure if it's relatively, can we trust it, right? So there's a lot of like ethical concerns of it. And more so, it's on the accountability aspect, since we're also like consuming that content, right? And for example, we're generating a lot of like information through our own social media platforms and other platforms that we can actually expand. We need to also like be accountable to, we use these tools, so we need to also make sure that we also like provide reliable content to people. Right? So it's more of that, not just only entrusting to artificial intelligence per se, but also like improving how we use these tools also.
Right. Of course.
You know, sorry to cut you off, Mo. I also want to ask about how sometimes AI can be manipulated by certain users, by certain actors. I mean, one of the biggest issues when it comes to DeepSeek in particular is censorship of certain content and information. I mean, like we can actually look at it right now because I may have gotten DeepSeek right now. For example, if you go on ChatGPT and you ask for who owns the West Philippine Sea, you're going to have an explanation on what the issue is when it comes to West Philippine Sea. But when you open DeepSeek and you ask the exact same question, it says that it is beyond its
Yeah,
current
it can't
scope.
answer it.
It's beyond its current scope. So when you look at just how actual human actors actually have an influence on AI and can actually dictate what data is being shown or being presented or being manipulated, just how big of a factor is that?
It is a factor depending on like how open or like closed that technology is. Like if we're talking about OpenAI, they started it as an open source project, but since they moved to a commercial path, the way that how it is constructed is already obstructed to us, like who will want to explore how it actually works. Particularly for DeepSeek, yes, they have their own systems deployed that you can actually use, but you can use the same technology and train it with your own data. That's what's unique about it, right? So I think in terms of like, okay, there's particular restrictions of like what questions. I think someone asked about Tiananmen Square.
Yes.
And then
okay.
does
They
it
couldn't
also
answer.
like created like does it also provided the content? So there's some restrictions on their own platform. But if you would want to actually expand that further, you can actually use that outsourced technology or open source technology and like build your own, right? So
Okay.
that's what sets DeepSeek apart. Comparing it to its counterpart, it's like it's available for you to actually explore. It's available for you to actually tweak it
Yeah,
yourself.
you manipulate
Okay.
as
Depending
well.
on your use cases now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I want to pivot back because I want to just talk about general AI in general. Like for you, you've been studying AI for over 10 years, right? It's such a complicated thing to just think about. So can you tell us what are the most misunderstood aspects of AI and maybe myths that you can debunk?
Okay, I think the number one aspect is like it is sentient. No, it is not sentient.
Yet.
I think it would definitely take a long time to actually
okay.
for it to become sentient.
Yeah.
I think people always think that it can actually answer me question. That is already the first thing that they think, that it has its own way of like thinking. But it's different because as humans, right, we can actually add our own common sense. We have our own we have our own like point of view or like perspectives depending on like cultural issues, to which it's hard to actually place an artificial intelligence system to have that. It's hard to actually come up with those type of like reasoning. Another misconception is like people think that AI is like just one thing.
Okay.
Like it's just a one big brain. No, it actually consists of like multiple systems under it. Like if we're talking about text data, it's a separate text system. If we're talking about image data, like your pictures, so you have a separate AI systems for it. So
Okay.
that's another like misconception always people think. Another is like people always thought that it's going to like replace jobs. I think it's more of like it now evolves. It now help us to like do ways or like do jobs differently. So I think there are, we're seeing like particularly in the Philippines that they use artificial intelligence to augment people's work. It's more of like them checking, for example, them automating some of the process, like AI doing it, but you still have like humans to cross-check, validate,
Yeah.
and look into the output if it's relatively correct. Because you can ask AI to be accountable if it's actually right or wrong, right? So you still have
Right.
particularly like human oversight to do
Yeah.
that particular
I think that's one of the biggest worries, you know, AI
Right.
replacing humans and taking job opportunities
Right.
from humans, right? I think that's one of the biggest concerns that people are worried about.
Right.
Yeah.
But where do you see AI positioned in the Philippines? Do you see it helping us economically for the better? And where do you think we stand with AI in general and how we can use it to improve?
I think I answered the last question. Where do we stand? I think we're still laggards in terms of like how we adapt to artificial intelligence. We're primarily more on the consumer side, right? Because we
Yeah.
tend to be like, okay, there's a
Right.
lot of application. I download it, I use
Right.
it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But are we actually creators of it? Probably we're not there yet.
Yet.
I think that's where the opportunity is on how we can actually create something out of these applications or like create something out of it. And again, to also like use it as a way for us to like complement ourselves or upskill ourselves to complement it with artificial intelligence. And that's where I think we can see us benefiting out of it and trying to like leverage and capitalize on the opportunity of like artificial intelligence globally.
Thank you so much,
also. Thank
Ralph
you.
Thank you,
Vincent Regalado, Chief Scientist and Head of AI Kollab Incorporated. I hope you guys learned a little something about AI and how you guys can use it to your benefit moving forward.